My name is Gary Greenberg, and the book is called The Beer Diet: How to Drink Beer and Not Gain Weight.
Hey, it's Kellen, and today on Diversified Game, this is going to sound weird. And some of you guys looked at the thumbnail and said, let me click on that because I've never heard that. But I have the author of The Beer Diet: How to Drink Beer and Not Gain Weight by Gary Greenberg. And he's just my neighbor down the street in Boca. And so he's going to tell us how he stays not just healthy, but active while he travels the world and does what he wants to do. Gary, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Great. Nice to be here.
Thank you for coming on. And please, for those who have, maybe already a beer gut, how can they, once they get in shape, New Year's resolutions and all that good stuff, how can they drink beer and not gain weight, stay healthy and active like you do?
Well, I think what you said, stay healthy and active, is the key. Obviously, there's a lot to it. I wrote a whole book about it. But I think, the very first thing I tell people that they need to do is to take responsibility for their own health. Because a lot of people, they're used to going to see a doctor and the doctor says, oh, you have diabetes, here's a drug for it. Or you have high blood pressure, here's the drug for it. And if you want to do that and take drugs all your life, then that's fine. A lot of people do it. In fact, most Americans probably do that. But if you want to really optimize your health, whether you drink beer or not, the first thing to do is to take responsibility for your health. If you have a condition, you learn about it. There's plenty of resources now, and there's plenty of doctors available who don't just prescribe drugs. So you learn about it. You learn what you can do to try to make the problem go away naturally, mostly through change of diet and a little bit of lifestyle changes. And most of the problems that people suffer from, diabetes, type 2 diabetes, is 100% lifestyle issue. If you change your lifestyle, the diabetes will go away. So it's basically learning about your own body, because we're all different, and what works for one person isn't going to work for everybody. But the first thing is that mindset switch, that the doctor isn't responsible for your health, that you are.
Definitely. And what about, I'm sure the book, I know, is full of satire, and, you're making it light and enjoyable to read. It's not like you better not ever do this, but do you also give recommendations on how much beer maybe, just you drink? Because some folks who have the whole keg or the whole 24 pack every night, they're going to say, hey, Gary said I wouldn't gain weight and I'm gaining weight.
Well, the book opens with a quote from Oscar Wilde, who is a British playwright, very actually Irish, I believe, and very witty. And the quote is, moderation in everything, including moderation. Mm-hmm. So the key to it is you can't just, eat and drink all you want and not gain weight or have other health problems. So, part of that is moderation. I discuss that in my book. The doctors and researchers all recommend for men that no more than 2 alcoholic beverages a day. Anything beyond that will harm you. Oddly enough, 2 will actually improve health, up to 2. And for women, it's only 1. And the reason for that is has nothing to do with anything other than the alcohol in it, because alcohol is poison and alcohol is not good for your body, although it is fun. So yeah, go ahead.
And when you say improve health, is that your inner, is that your mental health? Is it doing something, so a lot of folks say a glass of wine will help you. And I say, well, yeah, if you're stressed out and, any type of release will help you. Sex will help you as well. So how do you mean by improving health?
Well, I think, as far as the alcohol goes, I think they don't know exactly why they do these, large studies with covering a great population of people, and they look at who drinks how much and how long they live and other health risks, other health factors. And so when they do these studies, they don't really zone in on exactly why the alcohol is, improving longevity or whatever. They just say that it is, but most likely the reason is what you mentioned: stress. Stress is a real killer, and we all live in a 24/7 world, and it's just very stressful. You got kids, you know how demanding it is to get them to the soccer practices and the doctor appointments, and then even trying to find a few moments for yourself sometimes can be hard. So alcohol relieves stress, and I think that to some degree, and I think that's probably where the health benefits come from it. Conversely, though, alcohol is very damaging to most of your systems, particularly your liver and some other things.
Now you are, a graduate of Penn State, journalism background, and that you have traveled around the world. So I want to know how much of your travels and how much, research went into this, because you did try to make it, as lighthearted as possible and mix in, all of your experience in research. So did you go to 50 countries and get their studies on what beer has done for, this country and this region? Or tell us about, just the research.
Well, actually, I did most of my traveling when I was younger. I haven't really traveled that much in recent years overseas. Anyway, I've traveled a lot, nationally. But my knowledge comes from the past 5 years of doing almost nothing but natural health stories as far as my journalism goes. I was laid off a job working for the tabloids, the National Enquirer, the Globe, and all those supermarket tabloids that you read in 2015. And the first gig I got as a freelancer was as doing some natural health stories. And I liked that. I'm interested in it. So I just kind of kept with it. So over the past 3 years, I've written in excess of 300, published stories about all different types of natural, alternative, holistic health practices and things. And that's where most of that knowledge comes from. When I sat down to write the book, I really didn't have to do much research. Most of it came right from my head.
Okay. And it is a fun, read. And when you said tabloids, that brought me back. I'm like, I would have, as a writing background, that's one thing that I would have wanted to do. Never got to do. Right. For that. Now, I guess the tabloids would just be regular news, but because it's all, what can we sensationalize? With the book, have you been able during this pandemic been able to do any book signings, any type of events or anything to push it?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I did my first book signing last night at Due South Brewery. It's in Boynton Beach. And the branding manager, the brand marketing guy, his name is Doug Farrell. I actually knew him because I worked with his father at the National Enquirer. His father, Ray, was the photo editor there for many years. And Doug did some freelance work. So I would see him bopping in and out of the office on occasion. And his dad told me that Doug wrote a beer column for some local publication. So we talked about that, while I was working there. And then when I found out he was the brand manager of Due South, it was an easy in to make that my first book signing. So we did that last night.
Awesome. Now, with your travels, even if you were younger, writers, we're going to write, we're going to take notes. You may go back and reflect when you want to cringe or when you want to smile. What was your thoughts when you would go around the world and see how people really gather around a beer? No matter where you're at, there's usually going to be good vibes, maybe until later in the night. And you got that one or two people who, they had too many. We should have cut them off, but we're having a good time. What have you seen? Beer therapy is what.
Yeah, well, it's funny when I traveled mostly on my own. I basically had been living in California as a sports reporter. My girlfriend, who I was in love with, dumped me. My dog, who I was crazy about, got cancer and died. One of my roommates out of the four started dealing cocaine. And I just said, and then my boss started giving me problems about my column, which was very irreverent, you might say. And wanted to cut that from the paper. And I just said, I've had enough. And what would I really want to do? And my thought was, I want to travel. So I basically sold what I didn't have. They couldn't fit into a backpack, and took off for Europe. So traveling on your own, and you get to a new town, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? I mean, they had youth hostels they were good meeting places, but the local tavern or watering hole was the place where you really can go to meet people, and you bond over your beers and your interest in beer. And back then, the craft beer industry hadn't even started. This was in the early 80s. So, but for me as an American coming over and experiencing these bitter beers in England that they draw out of the tap, they're not under pressure. They actually draw them up from the cellar. And then, go to Germany, which is, basically where beer all started. And every little town had their own brewery, and they made their own beers, every little town, along the way. And that's where I really had fun, not going to the big cities, seeing all the big sites that you're supposed to see when you travel. It was basically, hitching a ride. People would ask me, where are you going? I'd say, I don't know. I don't care. Where's good? And half the time they say, oh, you got to come to my town. I live in a really nice little place. And they take me to to their club or their bar or whatever. And I thought, man, this is really great that there's all these little beers that I never heard of. Nobody's ever heard of, probably outside the town. Nowadays, you got that in the US because you got all these microbreweries. So it's really been wonderful. But yeah, I think anytime you get people with a common interest in anything, whether it's beer, sports, cars, you name it, you bond pretty easily.
Now, when you did all this traveling and then coming back, because a lot of folks have a fear of leaving the States. I know years ago, I saw a stat that said, 70% of Americans don't have a passport. And I was like, that's crazy, and lets us know, we need to do more. But I think folks fear of, if I do have to come back, how do I bounce back? How do I get everything back? And you've had many of jobs, very interesting jobs. If you guys go check out, his book on Amazon, you can see, he's had very interesting jobs. So how do you bounce back? Or do you come back from Europe with more money than you left with because maybe you married the Duchess of whatever?
Well, I never found the Duchess. I actually came back. I didn't have much money at all. I crashed with my parents in Fort Lauderdale. They had a pretty nice apartment, and I wanted to write a book about my travels. It was basically a fictionalized version, and it's really one of my favorite books, but it never got published, and I kept rewriting it and rewriting it and rewriting it, and it just got rewritten too much. So at some point, I need to sit down and actually rewrite that now that I got 20 or 30 years between it. And that's where I really learned about writing, was by writing that book and rewriting it and learning along the way. So for me, it was a pretty soft landing. I could stay with my parents for a while. I eventually was offered a teaching assistantship at Florida International University, where I got my master's in creative writing. And I actually taught some freshman comp courses at that point. So that's kind of was my reentry. It was pretty easy. I had a support system kind of built in, and I could kind of ease back into the workforce.
Okay. Good. And I say that because sometimes it's easy to leave, and you can always find a friendly person in countries, especially as an American. It's just, oh, the American is here, and you could be you can be given a spot, given a room. So I just wanted to know, to ease people's pain of leaving, because we really preach and teach that people need to go check out the rest of the world. The world is bigger than your city, your neighborhood, your state, this country. Some people get nervous living in Seattle. They're like, no, I've never been to Canada. I don't know how they treat me. And I'm like, huh? So folks like that need to hear your story and, hear all the exciting things that you have done. And with, everything that you have done, what is a community give back that you are doing now or that you may do in the future?
Well, I try to help out where I can. My wife's got a family that's very needy, so a lot of our charity goes to them. She grew up in Panama, and was raised in New Orleans, but she's still got a lot of relatives in Panama who are impoverished. So we helped them out a lot as far as financially. We've helped with, feeding the homeless. We worked at the Miami Rescue Mission when we lived down there. My wife and I run food drives for Boca Helping Hands. In fact, part of the proceeds from my book go to Boca Helping Hands, which is the local food bank here. People think of Boca Raton as a very affluent community, but there's a lot of people that are hurting here, just like everywhere else. So, we try to help there. And I think, a lot of it has to do with having a very good, positive attitude that you share with everybody, whether it's at work or whether I go to the grocery store or whatever. I try to spread warmth and positive feelings and energy, because I think that's lacking a lot. If I go to a toll booth, I say hi to the collector, or actually they don't really have many these days, but whether it's a cashier at the market, it's a busboy at the restaurant, whoever it is, I like to pay a little attention to them and treat them like human beings rather than servants, like a lot of people tend to do. I think we're all pretty much on equal ground as far as that goes. And I like to, just by my actions and by raising a child with good moral fibers and just being the best person I can, has a lot of impact on a lot of different people.
Yeah, definitely it does. And yeah, folks really, before coming here to Florida and just being a snowbird, and you mentioned Boca, it's like you mentioned Beverly Hills and or Hollywood, and we know Hollywood is not the Hollywood you see on TV. It's a dump, and Boca is nice, but yeah, people don't get it. It can be what's on TV is not always said. Folks say, get your mailbox in Boca. Don't say it's, Boca or Palm Beach Gardens. And it's like, okay, it's not like I said it was Mar-a-Lago or Ocean Drive, but I love that. I love that. Dealing with people and family in Panama, will this book be translated in Spanish? And, will they get a copy?
Well, that would be great someday. I would have to find a good translator, because I use a lot of inside jokes, kind of American humor and language and idioms and plays on words. So it would take a pretty talented translator to be able to translate it. But yeah, I would love to have my book translated. I'd like to have it translated into German, because Germany has the highest per capita consumption of beer in the world, and has since they, as far as modern beer, pretty much invented it.
Yeah. And, you'd really have to get creative with the jokes there, because the American humor and the German humor is not the same. But one thing I say about Germany, and I spent most of my time in Cologne, is it's kind of like America. You need to know a little bit of German, outside of the big cities. So I've found people to take offense if you don't. And I try to know a little bit of every place I go to. But I say that, hey, your wife, perfect translator. Sure, that sounds like great date nights during COVID time. I guess she's not open for the task of translating the book, which would take hours and days to do.
Well, my wife is a wonderful person. She's incredible energy, very positive, the kind of person who lights up a room when she walks in it. She loves to, throw parties. She's the kind of person that you meet her and she hugs you and you feel her warmth. I mean, she just got this wonderful personality, but she doesn't have the skills to do that. She's not as good of a writer and we often have arguments because I'm trying to clarify what she's trying to tell me, and she's thinking that I'm mocking her or disagreeing with her. And it's funny, we'll be sitting there and we'll be arguing, and we're saying, we're really saying the same thing. So our communications aren't quite lined up for that. But she's very funny. She's kind of like living with Ricky and Lucy from I Love Lucy. Yeah. She's like both of them combined. And a very funny character, but not a translator.
Well, that might be your next book. We're saying the same thing, arguments, but we're saying the same thing. Because I think everyone who is married, especially, I've been married 13 years, but I've known my wife almost 20. And it's like, we are saying the same thing. And so that's the next book. I'd love to read it so I can laugh and say, I'm not the only one. Because people, with your wife being such a lovely person, people would say, oh, that guy, Gary, he's so lucky. He doesn't have to argue with ever. And it's like, no, two people are going to have disagreement. So I could definitely see that. How beer can solve any arguments. I don't know if your wife drinks beer, but.
It's funny about my wife. My wife, she used to not really like beer that much, but she would like it on a hot day. The beer had to be about 34 degrees, it had to be ice cold, and one of those, kind of light yellow colored beers with almost no flavor. And anything that was craft oriented, that was a little bit thicker and darker and stronger, she would literally wrinkle her nose at when she tasted it. And I decided that I needed to, I'm a home brewer as well. And I kind of like, the hoppier, more bitter beers. And I decided to go on a quest to make a beer that we both would like. And I found a certain type of hop that was kind of a mid-range, because the hops give the beer the bitterness. So I found a hop called Calypso hop. Coincidentally, the name of her soccer team when she played soccer in New Orleans was Calypso. So I got the Calypso hop and I used that one for the bittering, and it was a perfect blend for the two of us. And she started liking, her palate adjusted to the new, taste that she was experiencing. And I knew that she was converted when one day I gave her one of my home brews, and it was out in the garden, and she got distracted by a tomato plant that was in distress. Put the beer down, and like 15 minutes later, in the Florida heat, came back to the beer and said, oh, it's warm. And I said, I don't care, you're going to finish it because it's a home brew and you're not going to waste one of my home brews. And she took a sip and she was like shocked. She goes, oh my God, this actually tastes better. Because really good beer has flavors that come out, not when it's ice cold, but when it's a little, it might be chilled, but, you can drink even warm beer and it's not bad. The flavors come out. So she's converted now. And last night she actually drank this very heavy stout beer that she loved. It's called Trench. Trying to remember, it's two names, something Trench. That Due South makes, and it's a very, very good beer, and that's what she ordered.
Wow. And I would assume, my wife being from Cameroon, West Africa, that Panama and how Cameroon, beer is, you can go to your local, that's your place to be. Cameroonians tell me we'll never have problems as long as we can have our beer. But my wife she's never tried beer. She's like, I can smell it and no, I won't like it. And, and it's fine. I'm not here to force you to do anything, because more for me and cheaper bill when we were in college. Hey, you know what? It's all right. But, is the culture of beer in Panama similar to, what you saw in Europe, what you could see in, the Caribbean and everywhere else?
Not really. I mean, I think since I've last been there, the craft beer industry has kind of gone more global to a lot of places where beer wasn't that popular. Like you go on in the islands now, some of these, Caribbean islands have, little microbreweries and stuff are beginning to pop up. But most of the beer in Panama, from my experience, Balboa, and I'm trying to think of some of the other brands, is more lagers like what you get in the States. But I think there's probably some microbreweries popping up there. We were just looking at a property in Panama. We'd like to get something down there, and it's a little hostel, like a youth hostel. And my wife was trying to entice me to go in on the deal, and she says, well, you can do your own little microbrewery there. So So I think that could be in the future at some point. Right now, we can't travel there because of COVID, so we're not doing anything at this point. But maybe someday.
Yeah, right now you can get your, the planning together. That's what COVID, I think, is. Time to plan, put your bit cash or, whatever crypto you want to use that's not regulated. And
Yeah.
then once things open, spend it because it's yours and you've earned it and don't have to, deal with, the IRS or people trying to come take it. I'd love to go check out Panama. That's the plan when things open up, to go see all of the Caribbean and other states. We love to travel here, and we love that you shared the game. I want people to go on Amazon. The links will be in the description box, and get the book. Check out the book. It's a fun read, and I tell you, read a book a week and see how your life changes. Gary, I thank you for coming on, and we can take this off air.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. It's been a delight talking to you.